Hello, I'm Kara from Kara Tarot, and today I'm just doing something fun. Hashtag 54321 Tarot. This is a video request from Kelly Bear, and I think it's just something fun and a great idea. And Kelly, I love the idea that you put it together so that it could be a little flexible. So I am actually starting that way. I'm starting by including the 5 decks with the 4 books, and because I'm telling a little story on myself, I blush to disclose the 5 decks I'm choosing are decks I haven't used. There are decks that some of them I've opened and I've looked through them, but I've intentionally set them aside because there is a book that I want to read either about those cards or about topics related to that card, and I want to read the books before I start working with that deck so that I feel I have the appropriate background mindset. I would equate it to, as an actress, if I'm doing an historical play and we're setting it in historical times, which is a caveat because they don't always now, but if I'm doing an historical play, I want to read up on that historical time and so that I can understand the social mindset, the cultural mindset, the historical mindset of the character before I ever start working on that play, because I don't want to make character decisions about the character based in today's mindset. So that's my equivalent between acting and working with the tarot. Is I want to understand the background. I will often look up the artist or creator interviews to see what they've had to say about it, which I have done. For one of these decks, I found a really wonderful interview, and I'll talk about that more. And so that I can understand a lot of the influences that went into the creation of the deck and their understanding and meanings in that, so that I can have that as a basis and a background before I start layering my work with it. So that's my excuse anyway, and I'm sticking with it. So thanks for this great idea, Kelly, and I hope you enjoy finding out these 54321 things about me. Well, I'm back from a different visual angle, and also, it turns out, a few months later. Many of you know that in addition to being a harpist and harp teacher and cello and voice teacher, that my primary job is being a senior caregiver. And my mother turned 100 this year, and so we had a big get together, and of course that meant for me that there was a lot of organization and work to be done. So I've had a little break. So my intention was, and still basically true, that I have not really worked with these decks that I'm talking about. And so that's my premise, is that the decks that I'm highlighting and the books related to them are decks that I have not worked with very much. Although in the meantime, I have worked with a couple of them a little bit, and I'll talk about that. The first one I want to mention, the first book, because I'm doing books and decks together. The first one I want to mention is The Tarot Life Planner, Change Your Destiny and Enrich Your Life by Lady Lorelei. This book has, unfortunately, for whatever reason, flown under the radar a little bit, and it is absolutely fantastic. It was first published in 2004 in Great Britain, and I have talked about this book before, I think possibly because the title made people think it was a calendar book, and it's not. It's about using the tarot to help plan out different aspects of your life, using the cards to do that. It's not a calendar book. It's beautifully laid out. in sections, first the majors, but then one of the things that I love about it is that the numbers are broken out one by one with the different suits of the numbers. It was designed, as shown in the picture, to be used with the classic tarot by Lo Scarabeo. I believe there's another name for this deck in other publishers with very similar, if not the same, photos based on an historic deck. Beautiful deck. Absolutely gorgeous etchings. If you like historical etchings that still have a lot of color to them, this is the deck for you. And this deck is gorgeously highlighted throughout this book. And as you will see later, for almost every card number or all of the majors, there's either an exercise or a card layout for each one of the cards. It's a fantastic book. I cannot recommend it highly enough. And then a ton of spreads. But for me, I have joked that I have been pip averse and possibly shifted to being pip curious. And now, thanks to this book, I am becoming more pip adept, because in using this book is really handy to just pick up to get a quick read, because for example, with the numbers, it has about half a page on all of, say, the fours, and then it has about half a page on each one of the fours in the various suits, which means it's about a paragraph for the basic suit card, and then the upright meaning and the reverse meaning. So it's really handy to pick up if you just want a quick read and a quick refresh on what that card means. And so I cannot praise this book highly enough. It looks different depending on the printing. There is I think a hardback version that looks much more like a grimoire. It's dark and it's tooled leather. I have the paperback version, which I got on eBay for a steal. I think it might have only been $5. So it's out there and easy to pick up, and as far as I know, still in print. So that's my book. And my first deck recommendation, again, not an expensive deck, from Lo Scarabeo, the classic tarot. If you love history, it's a lovely deck based on artwork, an original deck from the 1800s. My next book is not a tarot book at all. My next book is Judith Herren's Byzantium, The Surprising Life of a Medieval Empire. I am a history buff, and there are quite a few of us in the tarot community. And I had the Byzantine Tarot by John Matthews and Cilla Conway. And I wanted to delve into the history of Byzantium before I started using the deck. I did not. This is one of the two decks. The classic tarot I started using a bit with the previous book, and I have worked a bit with the Byzantine tarot, fully reading the guidebook that's in it, because as with other John Matthews decks, he makes changes to the structure of the decks and the names of the deck. The Byzantine tarot, he flips air and fire. So while the wands are basically the same and have the same meanings, they're no longer fire, they're air. And the swords, while you could look at them and think, oh, that's just a traditional Rider-Waite-Smith image with a Byzantine flavor, it's not, because they switched the swords to fire. So to me, personally, it seems he likes to change things up just to change them up. I also have his Holy Grail Tarot, and there are a lot of name changes in that. I do understand that from his viewpoint, he is trying to illuminate the historical aspect and the historical concept of the cards. So to be fair, he is trying to remain true to his research. It does, to me, make his decks a little harder to work with. That doesn't mean I won't, because this Byzantine deck is gorgeous, and it's a strong reader for me already, the little bit that I've worked with it. And there's a wonderful interview with John Matthews and Cilla Conway about this deck, and if I remember, I'll put a link to that interview that's on YouTube with them. The next book actually has 2 decks that go with it. That's how I'm working out my 5 decks and 4 books. The next book is 2 Esoteric Tarots, a conversation between Peter Mark Adams and Christophe Poncet. This book is a compare and contrast between the Sola Busca tarot and the Conver Doav tarot as esoteric tarots. So this is a study. As I said, I've been pip averse. So while again, I have very slightly familiarized myself with the Conver Doav deck, I have not really worked with it. If you're a real Tarot de Marseille person, you can cover your ears. I don't like the artwork. So for me, both of these decks, the Sola Busca Tarot being a really deeply, explicitly pagan deck, I don't know that I will ever actually work very much with these decks, but I do have them as study decks, and I do intend to do more reading on the Sola Busca. And so these are the kind of thing that I do in a lot of different portions of my life, in my music life. There are things that I will compile simply for research and education, and not necessarily be something, if it's music, not necessarily be something that I play, or in this case, not necessarily a deck that I work with. And the next is the reverse. It's a 2-for-1, the Tarot of the Divine, and the exquisite cards, and the Tarot of the Divine Handbook, a guide to understanding tarot symbolism, and the accompanying book of fairy tales, which has 1 page for each one of the tarot cards, and then 1 page telling of the fairy tale of each one. It can be a standalone book. It's called Beneath the Moon, and it also is by the creator, Yoshitani, fairy tales, myths, and divine stories from around the world. And even though this is a straightforward Rider-Waite-Smith deck, having again picked it up a couple times and flipped through it, I feel confident I could use it as a straightforward Rider-Waite-Smith deck. But in this particular case, it's kind of dear to me already, and I wanted to honor it by reading all of these stories first. Not that they will all stick in my head, but I wanted to read these stories so that I have a better sense of the full story when I first open up this deck, because it's a very straightforward deck in terms of the symbolism, easy to use. So I wanted to honor all this additional work that's gone into this deck by having both of these books and reading it before I start working with the deck. So those are my 5 books. 5 decks and 4 books. Well, it's 5 books too, sorry. But those books are kind of 1 book, related to the same deck. So next is 3 spreads. And I'm going to start with, because this is the spread I learned when I was between 8 and 11 years old, the Celtic spread. It is like breathing to me. I just found a layout of it online, not necessarily the way that I parse these cards. I learned from that old Eden Gray book with the red border that's kind of a lengthwise book instead of an up and down book, a landscape instead of the normal. And So I use the Eden Gray definitions, but it's what I've used all of my life, and I use it for all of my deck interviews, and it's just like breathing for me. This is the easiest spread to me to use. The second spread is the sun spread from the Lady Lorelei book, the Tarot Life Planner. And I just wanted to highlight this so you can get a better idea of all of the card-specific spreads that she has throughout her book. And this is a spread dedicated to the Sun card. And you can see some of the details that she has there. It's just another example of how thorough that book is and how useful on a whole lot of levels. I honestly think, and I've said this before, I think I could spend a good year with just this book, working through all of the content that she has and using it, and the additional meditation content that she has, etc. The third spread is a spread that, as far as I know, I created. I don't think I've ever seen it anywhere else. I call it the Trinity Tarot spread, and it is specifically devised to use not just 3 decks, but 3 visually different decks. 2 tarot decks, and either a positivity tarot deck or an oracle card. I will be doing a video about this shortly, the Trinity Tarot spread. There are details here, so I think you can see how it's done. You use a main deck. I often like to use a larger deck as the first one, and then a regular sized deck for the second one that is visually very different. And then either a positivity deck, a deck that always reads fun, or an oracle card for the third position. And the reason for that is so that you get 3 very different voices answering the same question. And here's the other 3 within this, is that I start out, you say, if somebody says, I want to know what's going on with my romantic life, or I want to know what's going on with my home life, then you would ask them to break it down into 3 components: romance, finance, work, for example. And so each one of these groups of 3 is dedicated to one of those components. Whatever one they feel is the main one is the one in the center. But it's not a past, present, future. That's not the format or how I use it. It is 3 specific components of the same question, so that you get 3 answers for each one of those components, and then you put all 3 of those together to get the bigger answer to the question. And the reason that I like ending with a positivity deck or an oracle deck is, in my experience, oracles tend to be softer and a little kinder. And especially if it's a difficult question, I want each portion of that question to be ending on the most positive note. So that is my Trinity Tarot spread. Look forward to a video on that from me, and hopefully in the next month. Next is 2 tarot habits or paraphernalia. I decided to go with paraphernalia, and I'm highlighting my huge pictorial Bible from the 1950s that I keep on my bureau altar space. And right next to it on a stand, I keep a skull. It's not a real skull, but a facsimile. To me, the tarot is just another part of the exploration of my Christian spirituality, specifically in the direction of mysticism. I don't think I will ever have the discipline that would be needed to have the real depth of mysticism of a Teresa of Avila or someone like that. But the Bible is my grounding in that direction. And as a Christian who reads tarot, I am consciously incorporating Bible readings into my tarot readings. And also setting my own personal boundaries on what I will and will not do with the tarot and the way I approach the tarot based on that. And the skull is my memento mori, just a reminder of how transitory all of this is, and just a reminder of how transitory all of this is. My grandfather, in the last year of his life, sorry, Debbie Downer alert here. In the last year of his life, my grandfather said very little except all is vanity, all is vanity. This was something he repeated a lot in the last year of his life, and it very much fits with a cognizance of memento mori, that everything we do here is vanity, no matter how well-intentioned. Sobering. And finally, the card that I identify with the most right now is the Nine of Pentacles. It's been a change for me to really blossom with my discovery of my identification of this card. It could be because having pursued an acting career and having lived in larger cities, including Los Angeles, I came back here to rural Maryland, and we live in the middle of the woods. So there is very much this feeling of I could step out the door and just be walking through the woods, in the garden around the house. And certainly it's not this kind of a garden, but appreciating nature, appreciating that kind of solitude. And I certainly have a larger appreciation for it, having lived and worked in very large cities for an extended period of my life. And so also with the caretaking duties of first my father, who passed away about 5 years ago, and now my mother, this all feels very present for me right now, aside from the fact that in almost all decks, this card is usually tremendously evocative. The artwork for it, as you see, and it's why I gave many different examples of it, is that the card is usually so evocative and so beautiful, and it's also acts as a reminder to me to focus on the beauty that is in my life. Again, that may be quite transitory. So thank you, Kelly Bear. That's my 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I hope I didn't go on too long. I appreciate the chance to take part of these things in the community, and I know mine is quite late since you did your initial one. But Kelly, I enjoy your content, and I like this idea, and thanks for the opportunity. This is Cara from Cara Tarot. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll check out my other videos. Please like and subscribe, and blessings to you.